Ashton Forbes, great to actually have you in the studio. Great to see you, my friend.
It's a pleasure to be here in person. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, you and I have had a lot of conversations over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
I was so fascinated about the disappearance of flight MH370 and couldn't wait to talk to you about the disappearance because back in the day when that story first broke, I was on the air live on Fox News that morning. I remember that. I'll never forget that weekend when that happened, and Tucker and I were on that weekend talking about it, and we just couldn't, for years, we couldn't believe. It just, nothing made sense about the story. So that's when I first reached out to you, because you really grabbed the bull by the horns and exposed the truth of the story, I think, in a way that no one else has. I want to get into so much with you today. I want to talk about plasmas. I want to talk about so many different things that have evolved from that. Hey, I want to thank our friends over at Rumble Premium, by the way. You know, Rumble defends free speech, and you know, you can sign up for Rumble Premium for just $10, or very, very cheap. You can save $10 off their annual plan. So when major advertisers are conspiring to pull their dollars, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turn their backs, calling Rumble, claiming that Rumble had a right-wing culture. But we're not here to fit a mold at all. We're here to defend free expression. And we're proud to partner with Rumble Premium. Completely ad-free experience, exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. You'll find exclusive content from our friends like Russell Brand, Dr. Disrespect, Tim Cass, the Mug Club, all of them. Your voice matters. So when you join Rumble Premium, for a limited time, you get $10 off their annual plan using the promo code Redacted. Just visit rumble.com/premium slash redacted and claim your discount today. Using the promo code Redacted, get $10 off. I think it's maybe worthwhile for us and the audience for you to maybe sort of explain how you first came to this flight MH370 story, and how it maybe kind of changed your life, and then we can go from there. But maybe sort of set the stage for our audience.
Yeah, and I want to appreciate you too, because you know, you are one of the only people who came from a mainstream journalistic background that actually gave the case a chance. You know, I've been out here saying some of the craziest stuff, that the United States has warp drives and teleportation technology, that they're hiding free energy from the world. And most people will not platform somebody who's saying things like that. And
what are they afraid of?
You know, that's the big question I keep wondering, is like, what are they afraid of? For me, and I'm curious as what your thoughts are on it. It's like, why are academics afraid to talk to me? Physicists are afraid to talk to me about this stuff. You've got people in the UFO community that make me persona non grata. I can't understand it. Like, I'm just trying to explain physics, advanced physics. I'm trying to explain advanced science concepts, propulsion concepts. And the pushback just, I can't figure out what it is. Do you have any thoughts on what it might be?
No, because I don't give a rat's ass what people think about me, you know, in that way. So I don't understand. Are they bought and paid for in some kind of way where they're trying to protect some sort of an interest? That's, to me, I always think of money. You know, my immediate brain goes to someone's paying them a certain amount of money to keep something hidden or quiet. Or maybe they're just nervous. They don't want to be labeled a conspiracy theorist, and they don't want to be labeled a nut. And I don't care about being labeled a nut. I cover every topic around here. And so I don't really care, but maybe that's what it is. It's either money to me, or they're, you know, want to be labeled a conspiracy nut or something like that. I
think the peer pressure aspect, and this is a really, I'm glad we're talking about this aspect of it, because a lot of people say, does Elon Musk know? You know, Elon Musk is shooting rockets into space and shooting satellites in space for, you know, the defense companies and defense contractors as a defense contractor. And you wonder, he went on Joe Rogan and says, you know, they don't have this technology. It doesn't exist. Is he gaslighting us, or does he really not know? I would present the argument that they really don't know, that even somebody who can be really awake to the corruption, the government corruption, the USAID stuff, you know, that you can be awake to the media corruption, but you can still be blind to the fact that that corruption also exists in academia.
Right.
You know, and I think I saw this with Professor Avi Loeb. He's a Harvard astrophysicist, and he's a genius. I highly respect him. But when I had a conversation with him, he says, there's no way they could hide this from people. He said, people would leak it out. And my response is, they are leaking it out. You talk to a lot of the people that are leaking it out, and they just get ignored. You know, they get labeled conspiracy theorists.
They've written books about it, for crying out loud. I mean, they've literally been on their deathbeds telling their families about the things they've been involved with, whether it's reverse engineering of craft, whether it's free energy, whether it's wormholes, black holes. They've written books about it. They've told us about it. So they're just being, I think they're being willfully ignorant about it.
And that's what I think it is too. And it's scary that at a very broad level, we can culturally or as a society be that willfully ignorant. But I think a lot of people that lived through COVID saw that, oh, we can be that culturally ignorant and we can have like mass formation psychosis brainwash us. And I think that's what's actually happening. And, talking to Avi Loeb about it, I understand where he's coming from. He says, show me. I want to see it. But then you go, well, that's the whole point. They're hiding it. The thing that I really push back on him, which makes me skeptical of him, and generally my view is I always assume people are coming from a position of honesty and not from a position of, suppression and maliciousness. But he actually was, when he did his PhD, he was an expert in plasma. Mm-hmm. And I go, how is it that somebody who's an expert in plasma is this, prominent astrophysicist doesn't realize the defense contractors have figured out how to take the plasma's internal electromagnetic fields and by just spinning it or creating a vortex motion, cause it to become coherent. I would think that somebody who's interested in plasma, like that would be an interesting thought to look into and want to look and consider that. So for him, I don't know. I think that the next area of topic of conversation I wanted to ask you about, this leads into, is that, well, what if it's not just that people are hiding it because they're evil, but because there's like something scary about some, national security implication related to it? That's not aliens or whatever, but something very scary that anybody who finds out the truth just goes, okay, yeah, we do need to hide it,
Yeah, maybe that's the case. You sort of think like Stranger Things, like, oh my God, we've opened a rift to, the upside down, and it would be too catastrophic for people to start figuring out that, this exists. Well, I mean, from the plasma perspective, well, first of all, what is plasma? And when you look at, we're talking about these orbs that really were surrounding flight MH370, right? So these two different videos that have emerged over the years, and when you sync them up, they're synced up from two different sources. They've not been debunked. The opposite of debunked, they've been bunked actually. And so, what are we looking at here when we talk about these like plasmas? What are they? Do you think they're intelligent? Are we operating them?
Yeah, I think we're operating them, but you could definitely have a conversation about, are they sentient? Are they intelligent? And where does consciousness and the soul even come from? I think that as you dig into this idea of 0-point energy, the ether, people are definitely putting two and two together and going, well, if there's this energy field in this extra dimension, is that where our souls are coming from potentially? But in this case of the plasma orbs, I think there's a more mundane explanation. And plasma is actually when you just take, the simplest explanation is taking a hydrogen atom, which is a nucleus with one electron spinning around it. And all you do is we shoot it with a laser beam to add some energy to it, cause that electron to break free from the hydrogen. What this does is it has a free electron that's roaming free, and now we have a positively charged ion. So before it was neutral, but you take the minus away, and now you have something that's positively charged left. This creates plasma. In fact, fire is a form of plasma as well. And what they're trying to do in these fusion reactors is they're trying to take helium, and they're trying to cause the electrons to rip off of it. And then what they're trying to do is they're trying to have these positively charged ions hit each other and combine. And then what happens is they combine and they form helium, for example, and other transmutation elements. And when that happens, they release excess energy. This is the idea behind fusion and using plasma for fusion. Now, plasma in general, though, when you rip apart that positive and minus, the way I tell people to think about it is imagine a battery. What is a battery? What is a capacitor? A battery capacitor is just a positive and minus that have been separated. So you could say it's analogous when you are making this plasma to creating a battery, an asymmetry. So if you can keep the positive and negative parts separated, they naturally want to attract together because that's what positive and negative do. Then you've created maybe a battery or lightning, because that's actually what lightning is that lightning forms because at some point the voltage potential between the cloud and the ground is strong enough to break through the air, which is a resistor, an insulator. And so with the plasma, we're just trying to figure out how can we pull off these electrons and keep them separated from recombining. And it turns out there was a guy that researched all this in the 80s. His name was Ken Shoulders. He researched this, and the thing that triggered him to research it was he found out that space wasn't empty. He found out in 1980 there really was an ether. And he said, oh, if there's an ether, I should be able to make plasma at a big level and make it form shapes. And what he found out in his research was that when he separates the positive and the negative, he can get the negative charges to cluster together. But that goes against logic because you'd think two negatives should repel each other.
Right.
And so then the question was, how is that happening? Now, I think this is connected to gravity manipulation and negative energy. I think that when he's doing that, he's tapping into the ether. He's tapping into that extra dimension gravitationally, creating a gravitational singularity, maybe a very small black hole, for example, that would potentially create and cause this plasma and cause these coherent shapes to form. And then they do the same thing on the plane. They say that so what I would say here to people that are out there listening is that physics is scale invariant. So we were talking about atoms, right? And now we've scaled it up to this 20-foot ball of plasma that might just be an atom. They've recreated an atom. And then they're taking this same concept of quantum entanglement that might be at the tiniest scales, and they're using it on the plane. So the ball of plasma, I think they're mimicking an atom. So the crazy part is you watch the video very closely, the drone video. When the orb first shows up, it's yellow and green. And then when it starts to spin around the plane, you can see the yellow parts start to move towards one edge. And the reason why it's doing that is because the magnetic field is pulling the electrons towards it. So when it spins around the plane, it basically goes from a mode where it's just the electron shell around the nucleus to a point where the electrons are being manipulated as it spins around the plane. And I fed that into Grok. I said, hey, Grok, tell me about a situation where you have these double layer plasmas, and double layer just means positive and negative separated, and it's spinning around the plane. And Grok said, well, what should happen with the heat signatures, it should pull to one side and it should be parallel with the plane based on the magnetic field. And actually, if you go to slow-mo when it's super zoomed in, every time the orb is next to the front of the plane, the heat signature faces to the left or the right, perfectly parallel with the axis of the plane. Wow. So it's very powerful evidence that they're really creating a real magnetic field around the plane, and you're seeing the electrons in this plasma react to it.
When did you first come to this story? Like when was there like the light bulb moment for you that something was wrong with the official narrative of flight MH370, which was that it just crashed in the ocean. We found some debris and that's it. Nothing to see here.
And this is the part where I think people are misinformed about it. I got involved with it and I just believed all the official narratives. I thought that debris is all legit. I thought the plane crashed in the South Indian Ocean. Maybe the pilot did it, what have you. But I knew that the United States must know more. Like anyone that knows about the United States capabilities, they're much more powerful than what we know, publicly what we know. And I knew that before this. So I always knew the United States must know more. But the moment anybody starts to look into the missing plane, the red flags are all over the place about a cover-up.
Give me a couple of the red flags.
Yeah. Probably all the missing data. So it's actually Richard Godfrey. He's another one of the MH370 investigators, made this whole list. And then we're talking satellite data, acoustic data, no telephone data from any of the cell phones on any of the people. No communication data after the cutoff time where they claim the last communication happened. No radar data as well from 5 different countries, I want to say. So they say that the plane was lost out of radar. That's a complete lie. When the plane was lost from radar, Thailand's radar was still in range, Indonesia's radar was still in range, India's radar was still in range. And then if the plane flew south, it literally flew through United States radar and Australia's radar too. So when you're like, this is why I tell people, like, I can't believe you just need to use common sense.
Well, also you've uncovered, I think I first really learned about the high altitude or the satellite sophistication system as well. So even just forget about the radar. Yeah. We've got like, the mapping technology, which has pinpoint accuracy with all. Can you explain that? So even if you forget the radar piece of it, it's just BS.
And even since we last spoke, we found out even more. Like, I actually think we can say with a very good degree of confidence, we know exactly what that satellite video is now. It is probably using satellite data. And like I said before, it is creating this virtual playback, but it's called Argus IR. And so this Argus IS system is a visual whammy wide area motion imagery system. And what you can do in that system is that you can have, like, say, all of Sacramento in a big widescreen view, and you can press on the screen and it'll pop up a window. And now you have motion video tracking, DVR capability, move around. And they can have 60 to 100 of those windows open at a time. And the AI is also able to track hundreds of objects all over the place. Now they took that and they turned it into an infrared version, Argus IR. And that's what we're seeing in the video. I knew from the first time I saw that satellite video, it's false color infrared. You can tell because of like
it looks like daylight. Is it the daylight one? Yeah.
And Argus IR specializes on nighttime surveillance. That's the whole point of it as well. So that's actually, it's nighttime, but it looks like daytime because that's the point of the infrared. And the reason why we see the flash is that the flash is an infrared release of photons. It turns out in the real physics of negative energy, if you reduce the ground state of your hydrogen atom, you go from one energy state to a lower energy state, and that releases negative energy. And if that happens, you will get a release of ultraviolet photons not visible to the visible spectrum. And what's crazy is then you look back at the thermal video, that's why it's black. It's black in the thermal because ultraviolet does not give off heat. It's perfectly black in the thermal. So now we've gone ahead and we've connected that.
You're talking about that wormhole that appears. The flash wormhole.
That's a real negative energy event releasing real ultraviolet photons exactly as the physics would predict. It's absolutely unbelievable to think that the physics actually checks out like that. And so the infrared video can see it because it's infrared. If that was optical, it wouldn't see the flash at all. Flash wouldn't be visible. So we know that must be the Argus infrared version, not the standard version of that system.
Whenever I talk to you, people are like, wow, that video has been debunked.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people say, no, it hasn't. You clearly say that it hasn't. Why do people say it's been debunked? What do they mean by that?
It's kind of the same question you said before about why do people not want to talk about it? You know, I think that whatever that psychological issue is, that's the same thing where people want there to be whatever. They don't want it to be real.
Yeah.
So they're willing to believe anything. So if they find a graphical effect that's similar on one frame, that's enough for them. Right? Because they didn't want it to be real to begin with. And that's fine. You know, I'm not here to try to push people on that. So the two main debunks that people promote are the one where they say, oh, it's a VFX. And there's so many things wrong with it. First of all, that the stock effect that they're claiming is not even VFX to begin with. It's actually a picture of real fire. So if someone were to modify it, it wouldn't make any sense. It's a picture of real fire, you know? And long story short, people have gone from, oh, this stock effect matches on one frame to the reality is, oh, someone would have had to composite it and change it all around and change the number of frames, which is a completely different argument than, oh, it's a perfect match on all these frames. The bigger one was when the cloud pictures appeared in December of 2023, because the only way these cloud pictures could get on the internet in 2016, which is when we found them on the Wayback Machine. For people who are not aware, there were some pictures that came out that have the clouds in the videos in them, and they could only have come from the original source, presumably. So what that meant was that somebody proactively took that whammy footage and they put it into an existing set of photos that existed on the internet to make it seem like it was part of those photos. They just inserted 5 photos into an existing set of photos that had similar cloud coverage, but not the same. And so that if these videos ever got popular, they just have a days old Reddit account just says, oh, I was searching around on some obscure texture site and found some cloud photos over here.
Yeah.
And truthfully, it would be a nail in the coffin debunk if there was proof that those pictures predated the videos. But there isn't. The pictures in the Wayback Machine only go to 2016. The larger set that they're a part of does go back to 2012, and it was archived in 2012, but somehow those few pictures just aren't there. Huh. So to me, it's like, I don't want to believe a lot of conspiratorial stuff either, but the only logical conclusion is someone took the original footage and they put it out there, and so that they could potentially debunk these later on. So
what happened to the airplane?
Yeah. And that's the bigger thing is like, even it, like, I just tell people, don't believe it if you don't want to believe it. You want to believe the debunks, believe the debunks. They're never going to find that plane in the South Indian Ocean. And I keep saying it. They keep searching. They keep not finding anything down there. If the debris is from MH370, that plane ended up somewhere much further to the west because the debris is in Africa. I actually went and looked at the physical debris drift analysis that they did, not the models, but the actual, they threw the stuff in the water. The furthest any piece drifted in a day was 2 kilometers. They needed to average, on average, to get to Africa, 5 to 7 kilometers per day in a straight line.
In a straight
line. Every day it needs to be going the same direction. Wow. Impossible. Completely impossible. It's so hilarious that nobody actually even just looked at the raw data. I wouldn't just look, like, show me the real, and I had to like argue with AI to show me the physical results and not the models that somebody says, oh, well, it'll go faster because some wind will hit it or something, you know?
Yeah.
So there's no way. So the two theories for me are either the plane ended up at Diego Garcia and they have like an underground hangar and they tore it apart or something, maybe threw a few pieces in the ocean. Or there's this other theory that was promoted by a few other fringe investigators that they believe the plane was in the Maldives and then it got towards Diego Garcia and like either they crashed it in the water near the military base or it got shot down near the military base. I would be okay with theories like that because it could explain the debris in Africa as well. But you still have the same problem of these are highly trafficked areas. Like, how is there a plane crash in the ocean? You got boats going by all the time, planes flying overhead. People would see it. So at the end of the day, we just, got to use common sense and say planes don't disappear and they don't crash into the ocean without leaving a trace either, no matter where they are.
And the data, and the missing data. Yeah. So for people who might not be familiar with this story, you might say, well, why would they make this plane disappear? Why would the United States military, if they have these advanced technologies using these plasma orbs to make this plane disappear, where would they take it and why would they do it?
Yeah, I mean, the motive, right, has to be related to the engineers on board, I think. Everybody always says, anytime there's an accident, who's on that plane? And this is one where everybody was on board. Everybody knew that these 20 Freescale semiconductor engineers were the motive. I think what we didn't know back then was how significant microchips were. And now we're in 2025 and you've got the NVIDIA guy showing billions of transistors on the new AI super microchip. And so now we're starting to realize how significant they are. That company was connected to U.S. Aerospace and Defense, so it makes sense that could be the motive. The question is, this is not some low tech like hijacking situation. We're talking state-sponsored event. So the just real question is, okay, was it China that was trying to do something and we were trying to stop them, or were we always the one who were causing this? Right now, the theories that I think make the most sense are either, there was a fire on this plane and it was accidental. And then for whatever reason, we're trying to save this plane. Maybe those were VIPs that we needed to save. And maybe they didn't live. Maybe, who knows? Or alternatively, the one that I think makes more sense is that China had a plan to basically steal these scientists the moment they landed in Beijing or what have you. They were going to get, black bagged and disappear. And the United States knew about it and basically set up a counter plan to destroy their plan. Kind of how so they
couldn't steal IP. They couldn't steal. Yeah. They couldn't steal this intellectual property.
And to send them a message stop doing this. Because if you really do a show of force to China, it tells them if you keep doing this, we're going to make, we're willing to do some pretty dark stuff.
Yeah.
That's not a military plane. That's a civilian airliner. So it's a pretty powerful message. And then also the fear factor. I mean, I'm scared to go on a plane just knowing the orbs exist, and I'm not a head of state of a foreign adversarial nation.
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about these orbs and the plasma piece, because I know you're at first you're looking at this story, then you really go down to the dark rabbit hole of these plasmas and how they're being manipulated. Mm-hmm. Maybe in layman's terms, would you maybe explain how now you think that we have this technology that we can use it at will? We could just launch it up here to this aircraft, to this aircraft. How exactly are we being able to sitting here with a laptop and manipulating it? Or
do we need
CERN?
I think you can use AI. I think you could probably use Grok AI and be like, hey, have Grok AI go circle around the plane and then it'll go do that. And I think we have secret AI like that. I was talking to U.S. Navy engineer Salvatore Pais, and he kind of let it slip that they've got secret AI that they're using. He's not allowed to use normal AI.
So the AI, ChatGPT, Grok, that kind of stuff, all the consumer level stuff, hey, teach me a cookie recipe or whatever, design my new room or whatever. That's consumer level stuff. They have their own compartmentalized AI.
And he's not even allowed to use commercial AI while they're on the clock because they're afraid that it's stealing information and learning.
From the smarter AI?
From their engineers, from anybody that works for the U.S. military or the government. People didn't even know that. And you go, okay, so to me, then here's the question that I would almost pose back to you. And I'll give you my thought first is like, what is going on in this whole UFO phenomenon, advanced technology? It seems like there's this clock where AI is hitting this singularity. Yeah. And maybe it already happened in the military side. And that's how they were able to get to this crazy level of technology that seems impossible to us.
I mean, I've heard from in my research and just sources that I've spoken to that they already believe that the singularity has already existed.
Yep.
I mean, you saw the story over the past, we just had Easter just passed, right? And apparently engineers inside of ChatGPT were dealing with this like runaway discussion about Mary Magdalene that they couldn't control it. Like, I mean, I think we're already past it. I think the sourcing on that says that they've already reached it and they're really concerned about it. So basically we're not in control, right? I mean,
that's what's scary. Yeah. I mean, AI could already have won. They could have already won at this point, and I can't get that thought out of my mind because what's really scary about AI for me is that I'm sitting here saying that we have access to free energy. Like the moment you see a coherent plasma ball that is just not dissipating, that's somebody's figured out fusion.
And what do you do with that? So you've got this, other than make planes disappear, like what are you doing with this plasma ball?
Unlimited energy for one is one, because if you have such level of control that you can keep it perfectly coherent, that means you can spin the magnetic fields around with inside of it, the plasma, and all they have to do is just move the plasma around. Just the motion of the plasma itself creates a magnetic field. And that magnetic field is what keeps it stabilized.
How powerful is that magnetic field?
That's the part where...
Like we're talking kitchen level
We're
magnets?
talking more powerful than CERN, probably. Yeah. We're hitting levels.
How big are the ball? Sorry to keep interrupting you.
Yeah, please.
I'm just blown away by this. Yeah. How big would this plasma ball have to be more powerful than CERN?
So interestingly enough, the bigger it is, the less powerful it gets actually due to the inverse square law. However, something that Sal Pais sent me that always sticks with me was one of the emails he sent me. He said, look into Avogadro's number. Avogadro's number is basically how many, I think it's atoms you could fit into a tiny space. And it's clear what Sal's trying to say. Sal's saying that, yeah, you can have this giant plasma ball. Now imagine how much electrons and ions you could squeeze into that thing if you were to make it really, really dense. And turns out Ken Shoulders, the guy who discovered this, he called it condensed charge plasma research. It actually got the third highest priority by the Pentagon in the early 90s. And it wasn't just Ken Shoulders. He was working with Hal Puthoff, who's just like, I'm calling him the final boss. I'm pretty sure if there is an MJ12 or whatever, he's the guy sitting on the throne at the back, right? Like smoking and, issuing orders behind the scenes. And fun story, the financier of those two guys, Bill Church of Church's Chicken.
Really?
Yes. So if you've been eating at Church's Chicken, you might be giving us free energy or the military free energy behind the scenes. But actually the next year, that technology, condensed charge technology, got upgraded to the second highest priority. The only things that was behind...
In the Pentagon.
Yeah, in the Pentagon. The only things that was behind was the B-2 bomber and optical computing. It's like, okay, well, that's pretty high priority on the list. And then it just went dark because, that's what happens is that they research this stuff, it probably works, and then make that quiet.
So manipulating gravity propulsion technology we're talking about. So you've got not only free energy from this manipulation of plasma, but you're also talking about gravitic propulsion technology, the ability to just hover in midair when you see these UFOs. They may or may not be from this planet. They may or be probably from U.S. military that we're using.
Yep.
The ability to have a pilot or unpiloted craft that could travel at, Mach 9 and not have their body be ripped apart.
Zero inertia.
Right.
And the thing is, all the physics is the same. So what they're doing in all these situations is they're just taking this latent energy, this 0 point energy, and we're just tapping into it a little bit. If we tap into it, it creates a gravitational well. If we tap into it, that energy must go somewhere. So where does it go? It goes here into our reality around us. So we can create a gravitational well. We can pull that energy out and use it here locally, which is free energy. And we can also then pull out so much energy that it scrunches the space-time down. So, and this is where Salvatore Pais's patents come into play. We've been trying to figure out how do you pull the energy out of space-time? And it seems like the answer might be the opposite of what we think. instead of trying to use a vacuum to pull the energy out, create a huge electromagnetic disturbance that's really focused down onto a point. And that can just collapse space-time, much like how an opera singer can cause a wine glass to shatter. Just singing doesn't cause it to shatter, but if you hit the right note, if you really tenderize it, you can cause it to snap. And then what happens is the vacuum then just creates, they call it a negative refractive index, where now light acts differently in that region. So actually what we're doing is we are basically making a bubble, like an actual bubble, but in the space-time itself by changing the amount of energy density. So I tell people, think of it as like an ocean, and you're either increasing the level or you're decreasing the level, but you're doing it in a localized region of space. And what that does is if you change that, you can make it so that let's say I pull some energy out in front of me, then I'll get sucked forward towards it, just like a conveyor belt. And to your point then about inertia, if I'm on a conveyor belt, I don't feel any inertia because it's the conveyor belt moving, not me moving. And that's what's so beautiful about the physics is that everybody wants it to be so complicated, but I think it's actually just really straightforward, is that we're in a medium of ocean of energy. And if you just make a bubble in that, you can get anomalous effects.
I think that's usually the way it works, right? It's Occam's razor. It's the simplest explanation, right? So we know that Tesla had discovered this, right? This etheric energy all around us that we can pull from it and use it. I think his experiments, in the field, having like light bulbs set up across a field that were able to activate, which unbelievable. So then his materials were taken by the FBI after he died in New York City, and disappeared, right? So do you think that have there been any Teslas that have come along since then, average Joes who've in their garage have built something similar and have sort of disappeared as well in that amount of time?
Oh, definitely. And Ken Shoulders was called a Tesla of his time. Like Ken Shoulders was the father of microelectronics. Before he started working on plasma, the guy was making microchips and microelectronics before there was even a field for microelectronics.
Wow.
And Hal Puthoff too, people try to discredit him. He made the first tunable laser. He made one of the first optical computers. The guy's a straight up genius. He wrote one of the books on quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
It's like these people aren't lightweights at all. So yeah, there have been multiple Teslas, I think, out there. In fact, you probably didn't hear about this, but there was just recently a paper that a guy out of Princeton just wrote. They actually did a test where all they did was they took this metal tube and it's got this specific alloy and they align it with the magnetic field of the Earth and it creates a voltage, a current just flows through it. And as long as you figure out where you are on Earth and you align it correctly, And when they tested it, if they turn it 90 degrees, no voltage. So it proved that it's actually the magnetic field that's what's causing it. And the science is that the Earth, because the Earth is spinning, it's slightly out of sync with the magnetic field. And this causes an asymmetry, which you can get electricity from. It's a very, very tiny, tiny amount. But just proving that it's possible is a huge thing. Even the top physicists that were reviewing it couldn't refute it. All they could say was, it's a small amount. But it proves Tesla right because that's what Tesla was trying to do. He was trying to show energy's everywhere, the Earth, outer space. In 1891, Tesla actually even said in one of his lectures that we're going to, at some point, pull energy straight out of the empty space because there's energy everywhere. Movement is energy and movement is all over.
This has become really your mission in a lot of ways and I feel it because to think that we have free energy.
Yeah.
You have families that struggle every month to pay the bills and they're paying $200-$300 on energy bills, and all of these things when it's actually free. And we could have these free applications in the home to be able to use, and transportation. So that we're spending money on gas, we're spending money on to plug in to a thing to like charge an electric car when we could have this gravitic propulsion that allows us to go from point A to point B within an hour. Were you stunned to hear members of the Trump administration coming out? I think the Science and Advisory Tech, I forget his title, Science from the Trump administration, admitting that we have these technologies. The ability to manipulate space time. Like what? Yeah. Admitting it.
Yeah. And he's being literal. I mean, you look at the context, and the context even makes it seem even crazier. He's saying that we made a choice to hold ourselves back, to suppress ourselves.
Yeah. Why? I was curious about it. Why? Yeah. So he says in that clip, and maybe we'll just play the clip here.
Our passenger planes are slower than they used to be. Our trains crawl compared to those in other parts of the world. Our cars do not fly. Advances have not stopped, but something has gone wrong. Stagnation was a choice. We have weighed down our builders and innovators. The well-intentioned regulatory regime of the 1970s became an ever-tightening ratchet, first hampering America's ability to become a net energy exporter and then making it harder and harder to build. We seem to have lost focus and vision, to have lowered our sights and let systems and structures and bureaucracies muddle us along. But we are capable of so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow, and improve productivity.
So he says, we sort of intentionally pulled back on our advancements in tech. Why do you think we intentionally pulled back?
And this is what I wanted to pose to you. So this is the question I'm now asking everybody out there, because if you really take all this to its logical conclusion, we assume that everything we're saying here is true. We have this free energy technology, gravity manipulation technology. We could be living in the Jetsons. The flip side of that technology is extremely dangerous. I always think about Salvatore Pais's high frequency gravitational wave paper that basically says that you could basically use these orbs around an asteroid and just annihilate it. And it's like, well, why couldn't you just scale that up bigger and annihilate a planet? Scale it up bigger and now you can maybe destroy the entire solar system. Scale it up bigger and maybe you can make a black hole. And so you look at it and you go, oh, this is why. Because along with this great technology comes this great responsibility as well. And so the question I pose people is, what if it was a choice? You can have all this gravity tech, this free energy technology, everything you see in the Jetsons. You only have to give up one thing: free will. You have to give up your free will. I don't even think you need to answer, because I think you would say no. Right. I was speaking to an Uber that is based under the poverty line, and I asked her that question. Nope. She said she would not give up free will. So what if that's the case? That would make sense. It would fit with the way they're acting, right? Is that what if we made a choice and we said, you know what? We're not ready to give up free will for this technology. And that's the only way that we can be sure that nobody's going to destroy everybody else. Because we got to be tracking every person on the planet to make sure that nobody's going to go make a black hole negative energy super weapon or whatever.
Well, it is scary, but we give up so much of our free will already, right? And we're told after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, we're right now in the throes of the Real ID program, which is going to take away more of our. It's going to be tracking everything we do. You can't transact already in Europe. You're not able to transact in certain currencies and cash over a certain limit in certain countries. I think Spain is like 500 euros or something. You can't. If you use more than that, you're considered on the gray market a terrorist, essentially. So we give up so much of our free will in the name of safety, right, and security. So if they could couch it in such a way that it's for our safety and our security, we would happily give it up. I think we do that over and over again. Now we have to take off our shoes at the airport. We have to, you're going to track all of my transactions? Oh, because of the terrorists.
Oh, yeah.
Or MS-13 out of Mexico. That's why we've got to have Real ID. So I think we're very willing to give up our free will, although
I agree.
I wouldn't be, but I don't know. I think there's got to be a balance, and can we say that it would never fall into the wrong hands?
Exactly.
This technology.
That's what scares me a lot when I do this, because I've known those videos are real for over a year. I mean, just the other day I was talking to Benny Johnson, and I told him that I've seen an email that Marco Rubio's on that, no question, he knows about the videos, he knows about the plane. I don't know why he's being quiet, but what have you. But it scares me because not just like eventually someone will destroy us. That's one aspect of it. But man, I really don't want North Korea or Iran to have the orb technology that can take out a plane, or even other, rogue nation states that like things like ISIS that might form as well.
But you say that, and then yet we're the ones that made a plane disappear, right? The United States is the ones that have dropped the atom bomb, right? So it's always North Korea. It's always, but we are the ones that have, carry out wars around the world. So I'm more concerned about some crazy neocon nut jobs, that are desperate to drag us into a permanent war, against Russia or somebody else using this technology. And, that's what's really scary to me.
And that's my view too. And that's the reason why I have pushed forward with this is that, look, if they're already teleporting airplanes, civilian airplanes out of the sky, then they've already, they've yielded the high ground, so to speak, in the moral argument over it.
Yeah.
It's like, if we're already doing that, then okay, that's why I think we do have to release it. But being perfectly honest, this isn't something we can just willy-nilly throw out there. We have to have guardrails on this thing to make sure it doesn't get completely out of hand. And I think we should be putting guardrails on AI as well already.
Yeah.
Because AI plus free energy doesn't lead to anything good for us, unless the AI just decides that like we're obsolete inorganic beings or organic beings that don't matter at all,
The Terminator movies were accurate. Oh my God. Every time I talk to you, you blow my mind. Ashton, great to have you here in the studio. Where can people find more of your work if they want to follow you?
Just X Ashton on all social medias, YouTube, X, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. Rumble now as well. I'm Just Ashton on Rumble and on Pilled as well. So all over the place. Thank you, Clayton, for having me as well.
Great seeing you, my friend.
Yeah.